Well, my name is Larry Karen. I'm a professor of electrical and computer engineering, computer science, and statistics. I'm also the vice president for research, and my research area is in data science. And I've been a part of the group that's been building this certificate. And so what we're trying to do with the certificate is to give Duke students an opportunity to get training in computational science at a level that is appropriate for them. The thinking is, in fact, Vince Price, our Duke's president, has argued that some fluency with computational methodology is one of the new tenets of what it means to have a liberal arts education. In other words, to be broadly educated. And so with this certificate, what we would like to do is to constitute a vehicle by which every student at Duke can get a level of experience or training in computational science, which is appropriate for them. And so what that means is that irrespective of what major you might have at Duke, you will get some level of training in computational science to position you such that you are well placed for a very productive career. And so the certificate program is designed to be adaptive such that depending upon your background and depending upon how deep you want to go into the computational science, you can tailor your experience accordingly. The other thing that we want to achieve with your certificate, in addition to having some fluency with computational methodology or technology, there are all types of ethical or policy issues that are manifested by digital technology, issues of privacy, et cetera. And so with the certificate program, we hope to train students not only to use the technology, but to use it appropriately. This is a new certificate program, so it's under construction, if you will. But our intention is that it is going to ultimately be a signature component of the Duke undergraduate experience. So with that, I think I will stop. Again, welcome everybody.
Thank you, Larry. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Rispin-Sedlak. I'm one of the faculty helping to coordinate this certificate. I'm working with Akshay Baraja, who is also on screen. David Carlson is also a computer science professor here at Duke and one of the originators or the originator of AI for Everyone, which is a way that the non-computer science majors in this audience might engage with the computational thinking component of this certificate. So what I want to just do is very briefly go through the basic requirements of the program and then open it up for questions. I would be grateful. Okay. I would be grateful if we could, sorry, if you all could put your questions in chat and then I will try and get to them one by one. I may direct them to Akshay or David. So the basic setup of this class is that you would be taking at least 4 classes. So you'd have to, so this is designed for freshmen and sophomores mainly. It may be possible for current juniors who already have components of this under their belt to take on the certificate. They would have to do 2 things in order to do so. They would have to take the core course that's going to be offered this spring. And they would have to be able to do the Capstone project this coming summer. And in addition to that, take a hard look at their schedule and see if they can fit the remaining requirements of the certificate in. So we're willing to entertain the idea, but it would have to be on a case-by-case basis, working with us to make sure we can set up your schedule appropriately. For the main audience, which is rising sophomores and rising juniors or current freshmen and sophomores, the class, you would be taking one core class, which introduces you to both computational ideas and law and ethics and policy issues related to those computational ideas. That is going to be offered this spring. And then you'll need to take 4 electives from 4 different areas, at least one from computational thinking, at least one from ethics and policy, at least one from communication, and then one additional course, which could be drawn from any of those or from computation and practice. This is where it's going to get a little complicated, so I ask you to refer back to the 2 links that I put in the chat for some of the exact details on this. You can satisfy one of these electives through co-curricular content. And so great examples of that are Plus DataScience or the Winter Breakaway that's being offered right now. And we will be we're developing a system for tracking and keeping track of and noting your participation in co-curricular activity. And we anticipate that this is a way of helping to build a robust community of people coming together over and over again to engage in this thinking, to engage in some of these discussions, and to do some of this auxiliary training. And so we will have more details about how exactly we are tracking that going forward. A question that I saw in the RSVPs commonly asked was, what will I get out of this? What are the benefits of doing this program? And I think that they're manifest on 2 sides. There are sort of 2 main groups of students that we anticipate participating in this certificate. One is people who are already engaged in computer science and related fields, sort of the technicians or the future programmers, if you will. And the idea for that is that we have gone through an extraordinary period of growth in the tech industry in the last 20 years, in which we have unleashed all sorts of technologies on the world, which have fundamentally changed the way that we function in the world, that we relate to each other, and that our society functions. And we're just beginning to grapple with that now. And this is what Dr. Karen meant when he said that this is going to be part of the new liberal arts education going forward. I think that to be a citizen of this world and to understand what is going on, you need to think about the impacts of these technologies. And so that is especially important for the students who are going to be using this technology as technologists or programmers. Similarly, we anticipate that many Duke students, no matter what their major, who are in policy, who aim to go into consulting or business, law, even governance, are going to be called upon to start using these tools more and more in the future. We're not going to get away from making decisions with algorithms, from using AI, from grabbing some off-the-shelf AI, from having chief technical officers in the C-suites of the companies that you work for. These decisions are going to become more and more integrated into your everyday work life going forward, even if you're not in the public policy sphere. And so again, understanding for someone who is not focused on computer science or tech as an undergraduate, they can expect in their future career to be grappling with these issues and to be grappling with the technology on a daily basis. And finally, sorry, I made a mistake. There's sort of a third bucket, which is those people who are quite interested in policy from the get-go. And of course, what is a unique offering of this certificate is for those who really who are concerned about the ramifications of technology, who are concerned about the policy decisions that should be made around technology, being able to participate in this type of computational thinking coursework and other co-curricular activity paired with law and policy at this stage will give you a real jump on that. This will give you a window in, even if you are not a computer science major, even if you're not, technically inclined or inclined to spend a lot of your waking hours doing programming, to engage with and understand the technology and engage with and understand the law and ethics and policy so that you can make informed and useful policy recommendations if that is the future path you see for yourself. So those are the reasons that I would think that people would want to engage in this class. David or Akshay, do you want to add, because I'm not seeing any questions yet?
I would just really want to emphasize how important it is to understand these technologies in most fields today. I mean, you can talk to pretty much anyone doing anything, right? You talk to lawyers, a lot of these techniques are being used to help search for relevant case law. If you talk to people at tech companies, obviously this is there as well, but it's also in supply chains. It's also in manufacturing. These technologies are really becoming ubiquitous. And so really the goal of this is to actually give you the ability to understand both the technologies, but also their societal implications.
Okay, I'm seeing a question that if somebody's already completed a plus program, so I'm thinking they mean by that Data Plus or Code Plus, and they are in progress to complete a winter breakaway course, how many courses would be left to complete the certificate? At that point, there would still be at least 3 courses left to complete the certificate. We would have to go back and see whether the Code Plus or Data Plus project that was already completed would count towards or work as the Capstone project that we envision. And then it's possible that the winter breakaway would count towards an elective, so make up that fourth course. But the winter breakaway would not be the entire elective on its own. Okay. Akshay, is there anything you want to add? Do you want to maybe give people a little bit of a taste for what we're thinking of teaching in the spring?
Sure. So I just wanted to echo what both of you said about the obvious importance of these technologies and power of them. But one of the reasons, one of the things I would hope to convey to students of especially the core class is that although these technologies are very important and powerful, they're also remarkably approachable. So if you have no familiarity with machine learning and deep learning models, they can seem mystifying or otherworldly, and they're neither of those. I mean, it's obviously a very active area of research, but to understand how they work at a very basic level, it doesn't require that much effort. And one of the things that we hope to impart to you is this feeling that you can not only understand some of these models, but start to implement them on problems that you're interested in. Yeah.
Yeah, so adding to that, I mean, just what you see before, the people you see before you are a good indicator of this. So my background is actually in policy, law, ethics, and policy. I am used to working at the intersection of science and society because that's the initiative that I work within. And so I'm approaching this with an eye towards every time I see a new technology, thinking about what are the implications? What will this do? How do we walk you through this? And not just walking you through what we typically see in the news, which is, oh my God, this is such a disaster. This is, leading us down a merry path, or wow, this is a fabulous new technology and this is an unadulterated good, but really thinking through, okay, here are some problems with it. are these problems as bad as we think? What are, what is the cost benefit analysis of this new technology? What is it bringing to us, and what are the negatives? How do we fix the negatives? And then we walk through things like, what are the technological fixes? What are the ethical fixes? What are the business structure fixes? What should people be able to do within their organizations? And then on top of that, okay, what are is a legal or a regulatory fix called for, and how do we tailor it to the actual problem and the technology that is there? And so that's a type of thinking that, that we have a lot of experience in science and society walking people through, that especially those of you in computer science or in the other majors may not be as familiar with yet. And what we would hope to do there is, what we hope to do in the program is to train you, not just to think about the problems that we identify in our coursework that you take here at Duke, but to continue with that process throughout your career in identifying those problems. But at the same time, Akshay, for instance, his background is in molecular biology, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he became interested, just as David was mentioning, and looking at all of the potential that AI has in that field. And David is, of course, a computer scientist who seems to be going at 90 miles per hour at all times, and is thinking about the ethical implications of this in his spare time, when he has some spare time. So this is very much a field that the three of us represent the crossover that this is amenable to, the sort of crossover thinking. And by becoming part of this community and joining in this nascent community of people engaging in these discussions, I think you would have a really unique opportunity to start learning about something that would take you a little bit beyond what you otherwise would in your coursework. Okay. I am not hearing, I'm not seeing any other questions. We are here to answer questions. So there are no gunners, there are no teachers' pets. Okay, so here's one. Thank you very much. What is the merit of having a certificate in general? When I was an undergraduate, I did a minor. There were minors available. And it's a demonstrated interest, I think, and at the very least, a point of conversation. So if you're looking at, how would an employer look at it, or how would a graduate program, right? So if you are in a science or technical area and you think that you want to make a pivot into policy, having something like this would be very useful in the eyes of either a policy program you might be applying to, or a potential employer, to say, not only have I been trained in the technology of this, but I have been trained in how to think about this from a public policy perspective, from a legal and ethical perspective. Similarly, on the other side, if you are more a policy person or a liberal arts type person, and you are very interested in and concerned about the ramifications of tech for our society, for the direction that things are going in, and you want to go out into the world and start doing some of that work, you will have a leg up, because you can say, not only am I interested in this, right? A lot of people may be interested in this right now, but I've engaged in some practical nuts and bolts training about what AI is and how it works and the technology. I've done some rudimentary coding. I've done a Capstone project. I understand a little bit more than someone who's just looking in from the outside and being a critic. I hope that helps answer the question. David or Akshay, do you have anything to add?
I think that's completely fair. I mean, one of the big things this is it will be a formal marker of both your interest, but also your knowledge in the area.
So the next thing I have is, what would the Capstone project look like, and what are the ways we could fulfill that? And also, does the Capstone project count as one of the electives? So the Capstone project does not count as one of the electives. It is separate. So you should really think of this as bracketed. The core at one end, the Capstone is the final bracket, and the electives in between. The Capstone is meant to be sort of a project where you're putting your thinking into practice. Right now, the main emphasis of the program is going to be routing people into either Data Plus, Code Plus, or a BAS Connections project. But it is the type of project where you have a real world application of what you're learning in the certificate program. Are there any courses offered through this certificate that focus on the uses of big data and machine learning in finance or economics? Yeah, so we're actually, that's the type of area that, that's the type of question that becomes pervasive when you're looking at AI and use of algorithms. So already in the two courses that we're working on developing specifically for the certificate, the core course, and then the digital intelligence course that will be offered starting in the fall, we're looking at areas like algorithmic transparency, algorithmic bias, and algorithmic accountability. And all of those, that type of application comes up in those over and over again. The idea of, so we would not be teaching necessarily, although we'd be open to working with people at Fuqua or in the economics department. We are doing a lot of cross-listing to grab courses that are appropriate for this major, for this certificate. We would not be teaching sort of the economics of it or what the banks are currently doing to create alternative lending criteria or alternative credit scoring systems. We wouldn't actually be teaching the mechanics of that, but this is the type of issue that would come up over and over again in both the core and the ethics and policy classes, which is this an advance? Is this better? Is this worse? Are we introducing new bias? Are we simply repackaging old bias? How should we be thinking about the introduction of and the use of AI in the credit and lending world? I hope that answers the question. How realistic is it to fit in a double major and the certificate? I can't answer that right off the top of my head. I know that Duke undergrads are incredibly hardworking students, and I'll tell you that a number of years ago, my best friend went to Duke and triple majored in math, econ, and philosophy, and decided to graduate a year early. So I'm sure anything is possible, but I think that's a conversation that, especially if you were a junior, probably not. But if you are earlier in the process, I'd be happy to sit down and have a conversation with you about how that would work, and what planning the next couple of years would look like. Anything else? David, do you want to add anything to the questions about the capstone or the use of big data in finance or economics?
So with regard to finance in big data, there is interest at Duke at making courses around that area. At this point, they don't exist, so they're not in here. But if they get added in the future, we would expect to consider them for inclusion.
And there are researchers at the business school who are working in that area, and one of whom we've already interviewed for the main digital intelligence class that we're planning for the fall. That's, another thing that this would do is we make the digital intelligence class we're putting together is sort of a new model, partially created by the COVID world, but partially called for by the nature of this material, which is that it's all very new. It doesn't necessarily exist in textbooks, and the primary source material out there for this are the technologists and the policy analysts and the researchers who are working in the field. So part of the core course that you would take this spring, and then the digital intelligence class, would be a flipped classroom format in which we do an asynchronous episode. You would watch an asynchronous episode with Dr. Nita Farahani, who's the head of the Science and Society Initiative, interviewing technologists, researchers, policy analysts, and that sort of thing on these topics, and bringing them in to sort of pick their brain about what is going on right now, information that's not available anywhere else. And we are there is a great deal of really tremendous research going on at Duke in both the core computer science areas and its applications in other fields and the implications of those applications. And so we're making a real effort to bring in Duke faculty for that course. And through this coursework, you would be exposed to them. And if you have a particular interest like that, I would encourage you to, you would be exposed to them, and I would encourage you to seek them out further. We have a question, which is, how do students apply for the certificate program? And is there a cap to the number of students who will accept? On this, you'll have to forgive me. We are not capping the program at this moment. So we anticipate that it's a new program, but we have already seen a great deal of interest, and we anticipate a strong starting group. And in terms of how students apply for the program, the mechanics are a little bit hazy to me, but I'm still learning the ins and outs of dealing with transcripts and the registrar and that sort of thing. But basically, for right now, the answer is you come to us and we will help make it happen. The first thing to do would be, especially for anyone who is a rising junior or a rising senior, would be to sign up for the core course. But also you are free to get in touch with me and say, I'm definitely interested in this certificate and I'd like to sign up for it. And I will help you work through that process. Anything else? Akshay, David, do you want to add some thoughts?
Can't really think of anything.
To add on that one.
Oh, sorry.
But, go ahead.
There was one question about big data. So one of the classes that we have will be dedicated to big data. Just like considerations about how to access it, how to store it, just the unique challenges that come with big data as opposed to not big data. And that's scheduled to be the final technical class. So just to address the person who asked a question about big data.
We have a question as for juniors, are there any exceptions from taking the core course in the spring? My gut is telling me no. I don't think that you would really benefit from the certificate if you don't take the core course until the spring of your senior year. But if, again, anyone who is a junior right now who's interested in the certificate, I'd encourage you to come to me directly and we can work through whether it's possible, given what you've already taken and what you have ahead of you, to fit it into your schedule. And for some people, you'll see from the detailed course information that I put into the chat, you'll see that there are a number of courses that that satisfy each requirement. So it's quite possible that you've already taken one or two of them and that you're on your way, but I don't think that you would be able to get around taking the core course this spring. All right, well, thank you all for coming, and thank you for your interest in this program. I think I cannot adequately convey to you two things. How exciting an opportunity I really think this is, how critical an opportunity this is at this moment in time. We are all living through a moment in which we're seeing the spillover effects of technology on the world that we live in. We have lived through an extraordinary year in which our ability to continue as a community of scholars has been enabled by the very technology whose ramifications we're contending with. This is a really, really rich area of discussion and study, and a great moment to start more formally thinking about this and receiving a little more formal training, and putting the scaffolding in place for thinking that most of us are going to be doing about this topic for the rest of our careers, certainly for the rest of our professional lives, whatever that may be. As David said, this type of technology is going to be ubiquitous, and the ramifications are all around us. So I really cannot convey how exciting an opportunity this is. And what you also cannot see right now is the enormous amount of work that has gone into getting us to this point where we have these offerings prepared for you for this spring and this fall. And we have a number of incredibly exciting, interesting, brilliant scholars at Duke who are looking at all of these areas, at the technology, at the legal implications, at potential regulatory regimes, at the ethical ramifications, at what we should be doing this at the personal, local, and national level. And we're very excited to be bringing all of those people together into this program. And we hope that you will consider joining us. Okay, with that, we're gonna end the meeting. We will keep track of who has attended, and we will be sure to follow up with any information we think would be useful to you. And if you have any specific questions for us, please get in touch. If you definitely are interested in the certificate, please get in touch, and I will walk you through the processes. And do consider signing up for the core this spring. Akshay and I are working really hard on it as we speak, and I think it's going to be terrific. Okay, thank you all. Have a great afternoon.